Okay, I'm recording this at like 3 AM, so I don't want to be super loud. And the way I'm recording this is a little bit weird, so I apologise. But yeah, this video is going to be a bit different, if you couldn't already tell, and it's something that I want to do a bit of a trial of. And depending on how this video performs, I might do a few more videos like this, but there isn't really that much that I would do them on. So this will, like, if I do more videos like this in the future, it'll have to be of, like, more recent events or something like that, because I don't have, like, many other interesting stories. There wasn't anything that really happened in primary school. There wasn't anything that really happened in nursery. There wasn't anything that really happened in college on account of me being incredibly depressed and not even going to college. I briefly talked about that in a previous video that I've since taken down because I just didn't really feel as though it fit on my channel properly. But I left school like 3 years ago now, so I might miss some details, and I apologise if I do. There are probably other people who remember these, like, stories better than I do. It's been a few years. I've probably blanked some stuff out. I probably changed some stuff mentally. There's, like, a lot that's happened. Okay, it's been 5 years since some of these things happened. It's been 6 years since some of these things even happened. So, I don't remember everything exactly. And on the off chance that somebody from my old school actually somehow watches this video, they somehow find this video and watch it, and you notice that I haven't mentioned you, it's not because I don't like you or anything like that. It's probably because you just didn't really fit into, like, anything that I wanted to talk about, necessarily. That sounds a little bit harsh, and I'm sorry, but yeah, not everyone's going to be able to make the cut. I could list off, like, a bunch of names, but it just feels kind of pointless. Anyway, so the first year of school was year 7. For American people, I don't know how that translates, you can look it up, but yeah, first year of secondary school was year 7, and I don't really remember much from year 7, but I did meet some people who are going to be relevant later on. Those people are Shania. She was lovely. She was a wonderful person, great to talk to, get along with really well. I'm gonna change this next person's name for reasons that you'll find out later. So her name is Amanda. That's not her name, but yeah, I'm changing her name for reasons that you'll figure out later. She was okay to talk to at first. You'll figure out when things go downhill. And I also met Eden, and David. There was also Cameron. I'm gonna give a shout out to Cameron because I did talk to Cameron for a few years until he left because he was a few years older than me. And we did do a few things together. We planned out a few projects. I helped on a project that I don't know if it's actually been finished or if you ever did anything with it, but I did help with it. Don't know if anything ever came of that. Can't find any information on it, so I don't know. But shout out to Cameron. And then there's also David. David back then used to be the weird kid that did things for attention. Nowadays, he's the lead singer of a band. I would highly recommend going onto Spotify and searching for Without Reason and listening to their single Castles. It is really good. It's... Go on Spotify, search for Without Reason, space in the middle, it's 2 words, you can figure it out. But yeah, those are the people that I met in year 7 and are relevant to the rest of this. Shania, Amanda, Eden, and David. Eden's gonna be knocked out of this story pretty quickly, so, yeah. Second year was year 8, obviously it goes up. again, I don't really remember much about what happened in year 8, but I do remember some things. I met more people in year 8 because more people sort of joined the, at the time, small group, and the group started growing pretty quickly in year 8. Year 8 was when pretty much everybody that we knew joined our group. And I also fell out with Eden. I would like to apologise to Eden. I'm sure he doesn't care anymore, I don't care anymore, but back then there was this like really stupid petty thing that we had going, and it all started with me not going to his birthday. That was just me being a dick, a lazy dick. I apologise. And a few years ago I actually saw some emails. I went back through my old email address and looked at the sent emails, and I found some emails that we were sending each other, and it was the stupidest, pettiest shit. You would not even imagine. I am deeply sorry. I didn't even remember sending those emails, but God, I did, and they were horrible to look at. But yeah, so in year 8, I met some other people, notably Kayla, Abby, and who I'm just going to call Sai from now on. You'll know Sai if you've seen my other stuff. I met him in year 8. That was in 2013 or 2014. I don't remember when exactly, but yeah, I've known him for a long time. And there was also Jack, Ryan, and a few other people that I don't think are really super relevant to the rest of these stories, so not going to bring them up. Just shout out to a few people there. Also shout out Gemma. Gemma was really nice as well. So there you go. There's a few names that I just threw at you. All those people, really nice people. Don't know them now. They might be horrible. Don't know. I would like to apologise for being a dick back then though. It was like, I would say a theme throughout these stories is that I was kind of a dick until around year 11, and that's when I kind of realised that I was being a dick and didn't like it, so I started changing it. And since then, I've been a way more tolerable person to talk to. Yeah, you'll also notice that, like, at the start in year 7, I only really had 5 friends in that school at the time, and there was like 1,000 people in that school, so it's not like there weren't that many people there. I was incredibly antisocial, and I hadn't really had much time like interacting with people, so I didn't really know how to talk to people. But over like the years of being the one thing, the number one most important thing that I learned at secondary school was how to talk to people. That's the honest to God truth. Because in primary, I didn't really have many friends. I didn't really talk to many people. I was very to myself. Prior to that, I was also very to myself. And then in secondary, there was this group of people and it kept getting bigger. There were more people being added to it, and I had to learn how to talk to people in a socially acceptable way. And I had to learn to not be a dick. And I had to learn to actually like tolerate other people. And that is the number one most important thing that I honestly learned at secondary school. Everything else that they taught was pretty much worthless. The like social stuff that I learned through being there was more important to my life than anything else. I'm already like 10 minutes in and I haven't even like really given any stories yet because there hasn't really been any. But here's the first one for you. Year 9. I'm gonna give you a bunch of stories now because I can feed off what happened in year 9 to give a bunch of stories at once. So 3rd year of school was year 9. To start off, I'm gonna blue ball you a little bit longer. Year 9 was when I started playing Payday 2. It was around summer of 2014, which was a few months before year 9 started. So Payday 2 was something that was like a big part of my life for around year 9 to the start of year 10. And that's important because it feeds into something that happens in year 10. We'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, so at the end of year 8, I had to choose what subjects I wanted to do in year 9 to the end of school. And I chose history, and computer science. Looking back, I would not have chosen history. I definitely wouldn't have chosen history. Computer science, maybe, but I don't know about that either. I would have probably chosen, well, I definitely would have chosen drama over history if I could go back and do that again. Because history, I sucked at it. I didn't really know what subjects I wanted to do, so I just chose the two that sounded most interesting to me, and I mean, hey, I can brag about how much I know about history, but even then I've forgotten a lot of it, so I have to, like, force my knowledge into situations, like the things that I do remember. But try me on anything about the Cold War, I can give you information about the Cold War. Anyway, so I chose computer science and history. History I'm going to ignore, because nothing much... There were things that happened in history, but it was mostly just, like, stuff that came up because of the lessons, because the teachers were great. The history teachers were fantastic. Computer science also had decent teachers. Some people in my class would disagree with me on that, because most people in that class felt as though they didn't learn anything, but that's because they didn't try to learn anything. I will hold that opinion if you were in that class and disagree with me, whatever. But I personally feel as though nobody else in that class really tried to learn anything. And then they were blaming it on our teacher, who, to be fair, wasn't very useful. He didn't really teach us much, but he did, like, give us pointers in the right direction to actually learn stuff, and most people were just expecting him to teach us everything, when that's not what he did. So he probably could have been a bit more of an actual teacher rather than professor, I guess would be a better way of putting it. But yeah, like, I came out of computer science learning a lot from it, because I actually, like, put in the time and I was interested in it, and I actually, like, bothered to learn it. But I think the other people in that class were just expecting it to be, like, a normal lesson where they came in, got told what to do, and then left for the hour, and that was it. But that's not what it was. But in there, I met Joey. Joey was a really nice guy, to an extent. He was a nice guy until you got him playing games, and then he was kind of a dick. But we all know somebody like that. So we'll come back to Joey later anyway, because Joey's more important in year 10. While we're talking about computer science, this is where the stories can begin, because in computer science, not all of these were in year 9, by the way. Some of these were in year 10, so we're going to jump around a bit. But, this was definitely in year 9, I'm pretty sure. One of the first things I did in computer science was because we were using Python, so just for anyone who cares, we're using Python. One of the first things I wrote was a program that opened Internet Explorer in infinite loop, just to see if I could. And it worked. It did its thing. I saved the file, was like, that's neat. Sent it to a couple people that were like, that I knew was a jerk. And then somebody sent it to somebody else, and then somebody sent it to somebody else, and then somebody sent it to somebody else, and at some point the file was renamed, because originally my file name for it was just something like Infinite Internet Explorer or something like that. It quite clearly said what it did. But at some point somebody renamed it to just like Open Me, or like Don't Open Me, or something like that, and that caused problems, because somebody in that class was really stupid and opened it, and he didn't know how to stop it. Yeah. And then somebody said that I made the file, which I did, but I didn't send it to him. I sent it to a couple of people with a clear file name. So it wasn't really my fault, but it was my fault for sending it out in the first place. I will take credit for that. And I got into trouble for that, because somebody else renamed a file that I sent to them, and they sent it to the entire class, and one person opened it. But then, in a different manner, I actually found something that was actually beneficial. I think this was in either year 10 or 11, I don't remember. It was towards the end of school anyway. I found an exploit of sorts, because the way the school computers were set up was basically with CMD. There was an incident a few years before. There was an incident a few years before I got to that school, where somebody had used CMD to write a batch file that would open the CMD file and duplicate itself across all active computers on the network, and then run themselves. So every computer on the network would run this CMD file simultaneously, and as long as one computer was still running with the CMD file, it would keep sending it to all the computers, so you couldn't just stop it. And that obviously caused problems, so at some point they restricted the usage. By the way, that was my sister that did that. So at some point they limited the usage of CMD, and I found a way of re-enabling CMD again. And it was really stupid. It was basically just, if you ran CMD normally, if you ran a batch file normally, it would give you an error saying that, like, you don't have permission to do that. But by using Python and creating a program that opened CMD through Python, it would circumvent that permission restriction and you could run CMD files again. And I experimented with it for a little bit. I didn't do anything, like, insane. I just did, like, a few really basic CMD, like, batch files, because I didn't really know much about CMD, and I didn't want to, like, spend the effort to make something on that scale, like my sister did. So I just didn't bother. I just, like, tested it a little bit and was like, yeah, that's a problem. And then I created a script. I created a program file and a basic, like, test script to, like, demonstrate it. And that exploit actually got fixed. So I helped the technicians. The technicians were lovely guys, by the way. I would not do any of the stuff that I put the technicians through nowadays because I have so much more respect for, like, those guys nowadays. Like, the stuff they had to go through, Jesus Christ, I feel sorry for them. They were actually competent at their jobs as well. They actually knew how, like, computers worked, and they were just stuck managing kids in a school. And restricting them from doing stupid shit. So I'm so sorry for them. They probably got paid a decent amount for it, but yeah. Case in point, there was one time where I spent basically an hour after school. I created a file, a text file, called Shrek, and I put it in a folder. And the file was just called Shrek, and when you opened it, it was just 1 gigabyte of the text Shrek. It just said Shrek space and then Shrek space. It was just Shrek, just copied and pasted until it hit 1 gigabyte. And then I copied that file and I duplicated that file a lot. So I ended up with probably a few hundred 1 gigabyte Shrek files, which caused the technicians some trouble because they realised that, like, overnight the server space had shrunk by, like, a few hundred gigabytes for no reason. So they called me up to their office one day, like, a few days after I did this. I completely forgot about it by that point. And then they were like, what was this Shrek stuff about? And I was like, oh yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, I just did it as a joke, sorry. And they thought it was funny, they didn't really care. But yeah, they explained that, like, they wondered where the space had gone, and then they searched the user folders by size, and the biggest, like, user folder was somebody in sixth form. Sixth form is basically, like, it's extended for people in, like, America. Basically, the way our education system works is when you get to 16, when you get to year 11, you're 16, and you leave school at 16, but then you go to college until you're 18, or you do sixth form. Sixth form is basically extended school. It's basically like staying in school until you're 18 in America, basically. And college is basically just the same thing, but it's not at school. It's at a different building. But yeah, the next biggest, like, user folder was somebody in sixth form. So somebody who'd been there for, like, a long time, and it was 20 gigabytes. And then mine was like 500 or something. And they were just like, what the fuck? So yeah, I caused some problems there, which was fun. There were a couple other things as well. I'll quickly go over these. At one point in, I think it was year 10, I started actually it might be year 11, I don't remember. But I started, like, testing a file, sort of like the Infinite Internet Explorer file, where it would do something disruptive, but I never sent it to anyone because it was just, I thought it was too disruptive. I'm not going to get away with this. This is too dangerous. I'm not dealing with this. And I tested it to actually make sure it worked, and it did. Basically, what it did was it would delete all of the files in your user folder. and it would start at the top directory and then it would work down and just delete everything. And I tested it. I can confirm it worked. I made backups before I did it. I'm not an idiot. But it did work. It was kind of slow because it had to go through like all the files, but if you just opened it and left it in the background and forgot about it, it would just go through and silently delete all of your files with no warning. Which is why I never sent it to anyone. I never did anything with it, because that's just too... that felt uncomfortable to me. The fact that, like, if somebody did what they did with the Internet Explorer one, that would get me into more than just, like, don't do that again trouble. That would get me into what have you done trouble. Because that's just not okay. Like I said, with, like, bigger files and with, like, a lot... if you had, like, a lot of files, it would take a while. The scary part was that it would even delete itself, but because it was loaded into RAM, it would keep running. So you would have a silent program running in the background that you don't even have in your files anymore. And when I found that out, it worried me even more, because I realised that somebody could write a piece of code that deletes itself and then does something disruptive, and you would have no proof. That was kind of like a terrifying little that's horrific to think about moment for me. On a less terrifying note, the last story I can tell you is about something that happened. Someone plugged some headphones into my computer, and I was like, yeah, you know what, I'm gonna start blasting the Flintstones theme at full volume. This must have been in year 10, I think, because this was when Seaver Gunner was... I was really big into Seaver Gunner when Seaver Gunner started. For like a year after Seaver Gunner started, I was really big into it. Yeah, somebody plugged headphones into my computer and I started blasting the Flintstones at full volume. And then because the way the computer science lessons worked was the teacher would lock everyone's computer so that they couldn't do anything, and then they would project their screen onto everyone's screen in the class so that everyone could see what the teacher was doing. So what the person who plugged the headphones in did was, they plugged the headphones in, I said, you know, I'm going to blast the Flintstones through for volume, and then they waited, because I put the Flintstones theme on loop as well, so I couldn't stop it, and then they waited until the teacher took control of everyone's computer, and then they unplugged the headphones, and there was nothing I could do to stop the Flintstones from just blasting across the class. So everybody got to listen to the Flintstones, and the teachers tried to carry on as if nothing was going on, and then they were like, can you please stop that? And I was just like, I can't. Because I couldn't stop it. It was just the Flintstones. It was permanent Flintstones. Like, I had to ask the person to plug the headphones back in just to quieten it down again, because it was too much Flintstones. And it took them a minute, because obviously they were laughing because of what was going on and they didn't want to, like, stop it, but eventually they did plug them back in, and then we just waited until it was done and then I stopped it. But yeah, that's a more wholesome story for you after the last one. Computer science was fun, and I'm not super into computer science nowadays. I'm not super into programming as much, but I would not trade the experiences I had in computer science for anything. It was so much fun. Like, nothing beats the kind of stuff that went down in computer science. It was great. But then year 10, to end off year 10, I think it was year 10 anyway, it must have been. Oh no, sorry, year 9. I'm talking about year 9, not year 10. Yes, I think this was at the end of year 9, but I don't remember. So the reason that I'm not using Amanda's full name, or actual name, I'm using a placeholder name, is because Amanda and I had a kind of falling out towards the end of year 9. I would say that, but it was more of a misunderstanding that she escalated to the point that it just didn't really make sense. I'm not going to go super into detail on this because it's not very important, but basically there was a bit of a misunderstanding. She thought one thing, I thought another thing. We got a bit mixed up when I talked to her about the thing that we were mixed up on, she was like, no, that's not what's going on at all. Then she seemed to make it her goal to ruin my life for the next 2 years. I don't really know why that happened. Yeah, it was really weird, because she started lying about, like, the weirdest things. Like, prior to this happening, she was super nice towards me, and then after this happening, she just became very cold and, in a sense, manipulative, but I don't really want to use that word. It was really weird, because before this happened, she was, like, being fully honest, telling the truth about everything, but then after this happened, she started retroactively changing her story. Like, for example, one time, she messaged me to say something like, oh, I was talking to somebody about, like, going into town, do you want to come with us? Oh no, actually I think it was, she messaged me first? I don't remember the order it was in. I don't remember exactly what order it was in, but she changed the order when confronted about it, and she was like, no, I didn't change the order, and then, like, I went back and found screenshots from the chat that we had, and it was like, no, you definitely changed the order, look, you said back then, when you said it in this order. Now you're saying it's the other way around. Why are you doing this? And she was like, nope, I didn't say that. Nope, you're lying. It's like, how am I lying? I have screenshots right here. They're not edited. You can go back in your own chat and find it. It was just really weird. She just started lying about all the weirdest stuff like that. And it was even worse because there was somebody else who, I knew, Kayla, God bless her, she's lovely. She was backing me up on this as well, because she was there. She knew what happened, and she was like, no, you definitely did it in this order. And she was just like, nope, two of you saying the same thing, no, it's not true, you're both lying. And it's like, okay, but we're not, but we know what order it happened in, we have screenshots and we have functioning memories, and you're just retroactively changing your stance on this for no reason, just to make me look worse, I guess. It was really weird. And nobody else in the group really wanted to say anything about it, presumably because they just wanted it to die down and, like, the whole thing to end, because it was just kind of, like, dividing people, because it was like, we don't really want to take sides on this. And I fully understand that. I fully understand where they were coming from. But, like, it honestly got to the point where it was like, whoa. Sorry. It's just my brain stopped working. But yeah, it honestly got to the point where it was just like, I don't care anymore. Like, why are you still dragging this out? I don't care anymore. Nobody else has cared about this, like, ever. You're not convincing anyone. I have mountains upon mountains of proof that everything you're saying is complete BS. She never stopped until we left school. Any chance she got to say anything to me, she took it. And it got to a point where I intentionally avoided talking to her because I was just sick of it. I just wanted nothing to do with it. I knew it was going nowhere, and it's because of, like, talking to her that I've kind of come to the conclusion that online arguments don't really matter, and, like, arguing about things with people is just a waste of time. Because if you argue with somebody who's super set in their belief, even if their belief makes no sense, they're not going to budge. They're going to stick to their belief because, I don't fucking know, like, they just don't want to budge from it. And it was talking to Amanda that made me realise they're just a waste of time. Nobody wins, nobody loses. I mean, everyone loses. Sorry, everyone loses in online arguments because it's just, you waste your time. Nobody gets anywhere. Anyway, yeah, I intentionally avoided being near her. I intentionally avoided talking to her. In the rare situations where we were together, I avoided saying anything. If she said something, if she made a comment to me, I would just ignore it, because I was not going to stoop down to her level at that point. I just didn't care anymore. That's actually funny, because I remember there was one day in year 11 where at lunch, she suddenly just, like, started throwing, like, a bunch of things that had happened a few years before at me, and it was like, yeah, this happened, like, 2 years ago. Like, what are you trying to prove? Like, I'm not the same person now as I was 2 years ago, like, and at that point, like, it doesn't help that by the time we were in year 11, most people had, like, cottoned on that she was just full of shit, and most people didn't believe a thing she said, especially when it was about me. Most people just, like, didn't believe her, or if it was something that was true, most of the time it was something that, like, nobody else really cared about, or it happened a few years ago, and it just wasn't relevant anymore. And it was like, why are you still talking about this? Nobody cares. Like, we get it, you have a hate boner for me, great, I don't care. That's why I'm not using Amanda's real name, because she doesn't deserve the attention. Before I get into year 10, I want to give a very quick shout out to Macy though. I don't remember what year this was, but I know there was one year where in maths, I was sat next to Macy for the entire year. Macy was one of the nicest people I've had the pleasure of sitting next to at school. She made maths that year so much more bearable, and maths has always been like a subject that I've struggled with. In primary, I didn't understand maths at all until like year 6, and then things started clicking and I sort of got everything, and I sort of caught up in year 6. Secondary school, it was very much just a case of like, I understood what was going on, but I didn't necessarily fully understand it, and I had to like I spent like a lot of the lessons in maths in secondary school basically like experimenting with the thing that we were being taught instead of just using it on the questions, because I didn't understand how those things worked, and I had to spend like an extra like 20 minutes just messing around with them to actually like get a proper sense of how they actually work and how you apply into questions. And honestly, God bless Macy, she was so wonderful. She actually like made me want to go to maths. She was basically like part of the popular group that basically every school has. Actually, the popular group in the school that I went to wasn't like that bad, actually. Most of the people in the popular group were pretty nice. There's a few exceptions and a few people that I kind of like butted heads with, but for the most part, I didn't really have any problems with anyone at that school. But yeah, Macy was super nice. She actually defended me a couple of times as well when a few people actually, on the like very rare instances where a few people did have a problem with me, she actually like did speak up and was like, that's not cool about it. She was super nice. Anyway, year 10. Year 10 started off with a huge bang. So in year 10, so I mentioned earlier that I started playing Payday 2 in year 9. In year 10, that event happened. For people in the know about Payday 2 and its history, they'll know what that event is. For people that don't, let me give you a quick history lesson, because that's my specialty, because I studied it. So in 2015, there was a community event for Payday 2 called Crime Fest. It was basically a thing where there was like a month where the community had to complete challenges in-game to unlock rewards during October. And basically the whole event was like had this huge build up to it. Like people came together, they did all of the challenges in the allotted time. And then it was just this like huge thing of October 15th, we're waiting for October 15th. I still remember what day it is for a reason I'll get into in a second. October 15th, come on. October 15th. And then October 15th finally rolled around. And, oh boy, okay, so the first day of this free update event where new content was added to Payday 2 for free was microtransactions. In a free community update event. It gets worse because people in the community then dug up an old forum thread where the lead community manager for Payday 2 said there will never be microtransactions in Payday 2, shame on you if you thought otherwise. So the developers had said there would not be microtransactions, and then during this community event where they gave out free content, they added microtransactions, which are not free. You can tell that caused some problems, and the community went into an absolute meltdown over it. Yeah, it was awful, and I hate to say that I was part of that massive overreaction, because I was part of the massive overreaction, but there's something that contextualises the way that I behaved in that event, which is that on October 15th, the day that the microtransactions were added, a few hours after that update went live, I was sat there angry because, you know, the game that I'd spent the last year and a half playing suddenly basically betrayed the trust of its player base. I think that's understandable. I think it's understandable to be mad at the developers of a game for going against their word and sort of betraying the trust of the people who play it, especially long-time players like myself. The way that I behaved was not acceptable of that though. But the thing that makes it worse is that I got the news about an hour or two after that update went live that my grandmother had passed away from bowel cancer. We knew this was going to happen. We knew it was going to happen at some point, and I was just not ready for the news at that time. And I didn't really, I remember when I was told, I just didn't feel anything. I was mad about the Crime Fest thing, and then I was told that, and I just didn't feel anything. I just didn't know how to respond to it, because now the game that I'd invested so much time into, so much money into as well, because there was a lot of DLC for that game, I didn't feel like the developers of that game cared about the community. And now one of the, honest to God, most wonderful women in my life, who I've known for most of my life, just suddenly vanished. And I was never going to see her again, and it didn't click to me for the longest time that she was actually gone. I think it's because, all the anger that I would have felt about her being taken away was kind of being overshadowed by Crime Fest, and I put all that anger into Crime Fest instead. And I lashed out at Crime Fest, and I am deeply sorry. If GeneralMcBadass somehow sees this video, nobody who watches me will know who that is. People in the Payday community will, GeneralMcBadass will know who he is. In the very, very minute chance he sees this video, I want to apologise, because I don't know if he remembers this. I definitely do. There was a Reddit post that went up shortly after the Almir interview during Crime Fest, which basically just had a bunch of screenshots of GeneralMcBadass defending Overkill for adding microtransactions and all that shit. I basically made fun of him for it, and I posted I made a Reddit post with a Ninja album of loads of screenshots of him just defending Overkill, and I handpicked them. Okay, I didn't cherry pick them necessarily, but some of them were cherry picked, because I took a screenshot of every single chat message that he sent on that stream, but for some of them I intentionally cut out the post that triggered what he said. So for some of them are a little bit out of context, and a lot of people saw that post because it reached the front page of the Payday subreddit, and I'm very, very sorry about that, because that was unacceptable of me to do. And again, the way I responded to that whole situation was completely unacceptable, and that was more a product of the time, I believe. Because like I said, I just lost my grandmother. The game that I spent so much time playing trust was betrayed. A few months prior to that, because keep in mind this was just a few months after the whole thing with Amanda as well. So I was still sort of trying to deal with the aftershocks of that. It was not a very good time, and I apologise to everybody, because there was even a point in the Payday community, on that subreddit, where the people on that subreddit even started getting frustrated with me, because they had sort of stopped caring at some point, and the Overkill hate train had started to slow down, and I was still going with it, and I shouldn't have. And if anyone in the community remembers those posts that I made, it was under a different username, and that account is now deleted, so very few people will probably remember it, but if anyone does, I'm sorry. I'm incredibly sorry, because, yeah. Hopefully hearing what was actually going on around that contextualizes it a bit though. Anyway, yeah, so year 10 started off with that. And towards the end of October, David, who I mentioned earlier, the lead singer of Without Reason, a band, you can go listen to their single Castles on, or Castle, I don't remember if it's Castle or Castles, it's been a while, but you can listen to their single on Spotify, go do it. He suggested that we should play CSGO, and I remember my response at the time was something along the lines of, you know what, I don't want to play Payday 2 anymore, sure, I need a new game to play. So we started playing CSGO together, and it was honestly a lot of fun. CSGO was like a really nice break from Payday 2 at the time. And a lot of the comparisons and like problems and complaints that people held at Overkill during Crime Fest was that they were basically turning the game into CSGO. That they were turning it into a game with skins and like expensive stuff, and like they were building an economy that nobody really wanted. So I played the game where they got that inspiration from, because of course I did. And the thing is, I honestly loved CSGO. It was something like I'd never played before. And the thing is, I tried playing Counter-Strike Source in like 2009, 2010, and I just couldn't get into it. I just didn't understand it. It didn't make sense to me. But when I played it in 2015, I still didn't really understand it, but I could tell that there was something behind it, and I could tell that if I understood what that something was, I could really, really get into it. So I spent one night, and this is true, this is actually true, I spent one night binge watching a bunch of Warhol videos, Warhol tutorials, strat talks, stuff like that. I didn't even know how to play the game at the time. I just binge watched a bunch of Warhol videos. And the next day, I came back to CSGO and all the information had just kind of settled in. Some of it I didn't really understand how to use yet, like the strat talk stuff, like I didn't know anything about strategy, so I just kind of ignored it and just kind of like that bit kind of like disappeared into the recesses of my mind. But the basic like information on how to play the game from like the matchmaking academies and like the basic tutorials, all of that had sunk in, and I actually understood how to play the game. And then I remember on one of the first competitive matches that I played, I got 40 kills. It was against like silvers, so it didn't really matter, but the fact was, I'd gone from playing really badly to 40 bombing against like silver elites basically overnight, just because I watched a few Warhol videos. A lot of Warhol videos. I watched like pretty much all of Warhol CSGO videos at the time. It took me a few hours, like 4 or 5 hours I think. It took me a while, but I watched all of them, and all the information just slowly like mixed in and settled. I would not recommend doing that, by the way. That is not how you get good at something. You don't just watch a bunch of videos and then hope it settles in overnight. I don't know how that worked for me, but it did. Yeah, that worked somehow, and I actually understood how to play CSGO, and it honestly felt like a game like no other game that I'd played before, and it's why I have so much respect and like admiration for CSGO as a game. Like, even though the game hasn't changed that much in terms of like core gameplay, like between 2015 and now, I think all these people asking for like new weapons and whatever, it doesn't need them. It's still just as fun now as it was back then. You just aren't having as much fun with it now as you were back then, probably because you played it for so long. But I still find fun in it because I take breaks from it from time to time, and when I come back, it's like, yeah, this is fun. I also don't play the game solo queue because that's horrible. Don't play any competitive game solo. Never do that. If you hate yourself and you want to be matched with like people that also hate you, then go for it. But if you want to have a fun time, try and queue with at least one friend. Or if you really want to go all out, you should get 4 friends. Little foreshadowing there. Anyway, So yeah, me and David started playing CSGO semi-regularly, and I got really into it. I got more into it than David did, I think, but he enjoys playing it still. Back to the school story, we had something happen. So, every now and then, somebody would try and find a way to, like, slip some games onto the school computers, and the flavour of the week was Critical Strike. Totally not some random Counter-Strike clone. But yeah, someone somehow slipped this weird knockoff Counter-Strike clone onto the school computers. And I think it was around Christmas is when it was. So because there was like no work left to do in computer science, we started basically like this class-wide LAN party where we all just kind of like played it, and it was great. And there was this thing that happened because I obviously had played CSGO and I got on super into it by that point. I was dominating everybody to the point that people started kicking me and banning me from the game. But luckily, the way that you made accounts, like, it was like a really weird version of the game where like you could just make accounts infinitely, basically. So I created an account called A Skeleton. And I'll never forget this. I joined one of the games, and I killed somebody. I kept killing people, and then somebody from across the class shouted, "Who is a skeleton?" And it was the funniest shit I've ever heard. Like, as soon as they shouted it, I turned to, I think it was either Jack or David, I don't remember who was sat next to me, because me and Jack, David and Ryan were like close friends for computer science. I turned to whoever it was when this person shouted, "Who's a skeleton?" And I was just like, I can't believe you just shouted that. I'm a skeleton. And I didn't answer him. I just said I'm a skeleton to the person that I was talking to, and then obviously they figured out that I was a skeleton and they banned me again. But yeah, that was really funny. But it was because of that experience with Critical Strike that Joey, who I mentioned earlier, decided to start playing CSGO. And at that point, Jack and Ryan had already started playing it with me and David. So now we had me, Jack, Ryan, David, and Joey. That's 5 people. So we started playing CSGO regularly. Oh my god, did we start playing CSGO regularly? It was basically every night when we got home from school, we would come onto Discord, we would have a chat, and we would just sit back and play CS for a few hours. And I've never had such a consistent routine of like playing games with friends before or since. Honestly, that 2016 was the dream for me, and in many ways it's one of my favourite years that I've ever had. I know for a lot of people 2016 was one of the worst years they've had. A lot of people that I've spoken to about 2016 have said like, oh, that year was awful, like, oh, the presidential elections, oh, all this stuff, oh, it was awful for me personally as well. And it's like, man, I got to play some fun video games with some fun friends, and just had a blast. And it was like, it was a regular thing. It was like a scheduled thing. It wasn't scheduled, obviously, but it was like a regular thing, and it was like we would just do it like every night. And it felt nice to have like some normalcy, like something to look forward to every night for a year. And then it changed at the end of 2016. Because at the end of 2016, towards the end of 2016, Jack, Ryan and David were getting sick of Joey because he was being increasingly toxic, is one way to put it. And then around the start of 2017, I had also had enough of them because he was just annoying to talk to. When playing CS anyway, he wasn't that bad at first, but the more we played together, the more annoying he got slowly over the year. And at that point, nobody was playing CSGO anymore. Going into 2017, nobody was playing CSGO anymore. So that normalcy, that routine of going home after school and booting up CS had gone. I also want to apologise to Abby for some of the things that I said and did towards the end of year 10, because it was just unacceptable, honestly. The way I acted, the way I treated Abby was just unacceptable. Year 10 was a big year for me, I think, because, like I said, it was a year where I had a consistent group of friends that I've never had before or since. When I say consistent, I mean, like, we had, like, something that we would do every night, without fail. It was very sort of consistent in what was going on. There were a few nights where we couldn't, obviously, because things would come up for certain people, but even with just like 2 or 3 of us, we would still play a few games of CS. And I've never had that level of consistency with a friend group since, and I wish I could, because God, 2016 was one of my favourite years. But especially in the way that, like, throughout year 10, I feel as if I started to, like, change for the better, because, like I said, before that I was kind of an arsehole, and throughout year 10 I was still kind of an arsehole, but especially towards the end with the way I was treating Abby, I realised the way I'm acting isn't acceptable. This is not okay. I need to stop, I need to change. So I did, and ever since then I've tried my best to avoid doing anything that could possibly harm other people in any way, because I don't like that. I don't like feeling that. I don't like knowing that. I don't like it. And I just can't tolerate myself. Okay, year 11. The final year of school. We're almost at the end of this crazy journey. First of all, I want to talk about English, because in English, I had an English teacher that I don't think really liked me, because I was kind of not... Well, no, I wasn't, like, a dick to her, I just didn't really care about English, and she took that as a personal attack for some reason. And I actually got into trouble with her and had to have an hour-long meeting one time with the, like, head of year and her, because she didn't like some of the things that I'd written in my English book. So let's back up a little bit. So going into year 11, I had, obviously, exams are at the end of year 11, so it was a big year. There was a lot of stress going around for everyone, and it doesn't help that I had some personal things going on at home. Thanks for telling me I would fail my exams, Dad. I felt incredibly stressed going into year 11. And the further through year 11 I went, the more that stress kind of started building, but it wasn't that bad. Like, it was more just like, I'm probably not going to pass all my exams kind of stress. Like, I don't really care if I do, I don't really care if I don't, I just want to pass at least most of them. I just want to at least get a pass, right? Anything better than that, great. Anything worse than that, that's not good. But English was a subject that I had consistently been doing worse in. English was a subject that every time we did exams and stuff, I was getting worse results. And part of that was because I didn't care, part of that was because I wasn't sleeping well, and English was, like, often the first lesson in the morning, so I was just very tired and, like, partially asleep. Even then, sometimes it was the last lesson of the day, so I'd be even more tired, and then partially asleep. And I had this, like, very reckless attitude towards my exams. I say reckless, it wasn't actually that reckless, but the way that most teachers saw it was that it was reckless. She especially saw it as reckless, which is why she had this, like, intervention thing for me, but it wasn't really an intervention, it was just her being upset. But, like, there was this thing that I would do where in mock exams, if I didn't know the answer, I would write something stupid, right? I would write something related to the question, but stupid. Like, so stupid that I would remember the question. And at the time, like, my idea was just, I don't know the answer, I'm just gonna write something stupid and hope I can give the teacher a smile out of it. But thinking back on it, I've realised that actually, that might have actually helped me in my exams, because to this day, I still remember what those questions were that I didn't know the answer to. So obviously by writing a stupid answer, it meant that I remembered the question so I could look it up later. It was this like weird reverse psychology thing that I didn't even think about, but I think that might have actually helped me in some of my exams. Case in point, one of the questions was, I think it was something like, what happens to a periwinkle in a high tide or something? And I just wrote something like, it gets its winkle stolen, which is really stupid, but I remember the question. It was something about periwinkles in high tide. And then like, there was another question in physics, which was something to do with AC and DC energy. And then I just wrote like this long like description that was like, AC/DC is a rock band and blah 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 blah, and it was just this long description about AC/DC the band. And I still remember like what the question was roughly about, because I remember it was about the energy, but I don't remember exactly what it's about. But obviously back then I would have remembered exactly what the question was. Luckily my physics teacher was incredible, and he obviously knew that like I wasn't taking the piss. He knew that I didn't know the answer, I was just making a joke, no big deal. But he told me to be like obviously a bit cautious about it. And then there were other teachers who thought that I was taking the piss and that I didn't care about the exam, which isn't the case. I just didn't know the answer. Case in point, my English teacher, who, we didn't really have any mock exams where I did this, but during like when we were writing in our textbooks, I had like a week or two where I started writing some pretty edgy things because I was pretty depressed at the time. And I wondered if I could like write something and like see if she would pick up on it as like a call for help or what, and she didn't. She really didn't. So there was this thing where we were told to like write about like, I think it was like similes or like metaphor, I don't remember what it was. It was writing, we had to write something. And I wrote something about serrated blades, like cutting through flesh with ease and like stuff like that, just like really vivid imagery of like stuff like that. Then I had this meeting with the head of year and her. They flipped through my English book because I had like about a week or two where I just wrote stupid stuff like that. Oh yeah, there was one thing where I just wrote a lot of stuff about potatoes, and that really upset her. It was great. It was really funny actually, because in the meeting with the head of year, she started reading the stuff about potatoes, and she started reading it with like really angrily, and it looked like it sounded like she was about to start crying. And then like she started like reading it in this really angry and really angry and upset tone, like some like all this stuff about potatoes. And then the head of year like sat next to her, just looked at me, and I could see like a smile appear on his face just like for half a second as she was like talking about potatoes in this very upset tone. And I just thought it was the funniest thing. I think he thought it was funny as well. Like, he must have thought she was like being a bit too sensitive about it, but he obviously is ahead of years, so he had to go along with what she was saying. But it was the funniest thing because I could tell that even he thought I was just like being an idiot. He didn't think I was like being serious about it, I don't think. And like he even like tried to like defend me a couple of times. Like he was like, yeah, just like obviously he had to like go along with her, but when he was telling me like, yeah, don't do this again, he was like stop doing this. He said it in a way that like made it sound as if he didn't really like fully like go along with what she was saying. It was just kind of a thing of, I'm going through the motions, just don't upset her again, please. And I was like, okay, I won't. And then I didn't, because that would just be cruel. Apparently I actually made her cry at home because she was so upset by the way I was disrespecting her teaching that it actually made her cry. And she considered me one of the worst students she'd ever taught in like, I think it was 15 years or like 20 years, which I think is quite an accomplishment. So I will wear that badge with pride. I made my English teacher cry over potatoes. It's the funniest shit, honestly. And in case you're wondering if they picked up on my cry for help, no they didn't. They actually flipped through the book and like came to the part about like the serrated blades, and they read it, and I was wondering if they were going to say anything about it. They were just like, See, this is like really good writing. Like all this, like this is really good description and like imagery. And it's like, you don't think there's anything weird about it? You're not worried that I might be like severely depressed? Nope, no they didn't. They just thought I had a really vivid imagination. Thanks teachers. So that happened. Like I said, I was getting more and more depressed, and because this was still when I was like watching See If We're Gonna regularly, like I said before, I decided, okay, you know what, this snow halation meme in See If We're Gonna, I want to see where it comes from. I know it's some anime, I don't really watch anime, I've never actually seen any anime before or since, but I decided, what's Love Live? I looked it up. I looked it up again because apparently it was only 2 seasons long, and I was surprised it was only 2 seasons long. So I watched it and then I fell in love with it. Love Live is one of the moments in my life that I would consider defining. And that sounds really stupid, but earlier on I said that CSGO was like a game that I never played before, and I don't think I've watched a show before or since Love Live that has connected with me on quite the same level, and that says a lot. So the two things that have defined my life since 2015 are CSGO and an anime show about idols. Great. I'm a disgrace to society. By the way, this is specifically School Idol Project, not Love Live Sunshine. Love Live School Idol Project is the one that I watched first. Love Live Sunshine I don't really like as much. I watched it after School Idol Project and it just didn't quite connect with me as much. They basically removed all the elements that I connected with. I just didn't like it. It just felt like a bland, generic show to me. School Idol Project though really connected with me, and I really enjoyed the writing in it. If you can watch School Idol Project, I would highly recommend it. Actually, don't. You might not get the same experience from it as I did, and you probably won't. But again, it was very much a case of like the time that I was in, I was like, I felt very alone. The CSGO thing from last year had sort of come to an end, and then Love Live came in and it kind of like touched on similar things to what like I was currently going through, and I was like, yeah. And then when I finished watching Love Live, I decided to get Jack, Ryan and David back together, and I decided, let's start a new CSGO team. And I did this on April 1st, 2017. Yep. I got them together on April 1st and said, let's make a new CSGO team. Let's restart it, let's take things a bit more seriously, and let's try again. And I made sure to emphasise that this is not a joke, as much as it might seem like it. We spent like a while trying to come up with a name. Everyone was so indecisive in coming up with a name that I decided, well, if I just look up synonyms for indecisive, and then I looked up synonyms for indecisive, I found the word Irresolution. If you're in my Discord server, you'll know that my Discord server is called Irresolution. That's why. Yeah, Irresolution was originally a CSGO team. It still technically is, but we don't really do anything anymore. For a while, nobody ever did anything. That was the problem. We started the team again. We never did anything. We maybe played like one game with 3 of us out of the 4. That was it. And thus began the Irresolution curse. The curse where all I wanted to do was have 5 people to regularly play a game together so I could relive my glory days of 2016, and there was always a problem where somebody had to leave or somebody didn't want to do it, and then we were back down to 4, or maybe 3, or maybe just 2, and it never worked. I tried for 3 years. 3 years I tried to make a resolution work. 2 years I tried to make a resolution work, and then I decided, fuck it, it's not gonna work. So I've killed off a resolution as a CSGO team for now, because nobody cares about it and nobody's willing to actually like regularly come together and play a video game, so I don't care. I'm not dealing with it anymore. So then I did my exams. I went through all my exams. I did no revision before any of them. It's worth noting, by the way, I didn't do basically any homework in school. I did basically no homework, and the thing that the teachers always say is, if you don't do homework, you're going to fail your exams. You need to do homework to understand the subjects. You need to revise to perform well on the exams and pass them. I did basically no homework for all of school, did basically no revision outside of the like mandatory in-class revision, and passed all my exams. I'm not saying, I am absolutely not saying do not do homework and do not revise. I think I just got lucky, is basically the only reason I can give. The questions that I got weren't that hard and there was stuff that I sort of knew, so I was able to just kind of work through them. If you don't really know the subject very well, I would highly recommend revising and highly recommend doing the homework if you don't understand certain topics, because god, you're gonna need it. I was just lucky because I already sort of knew what was actually like going on. I didn't really know much, I just sort of like bluffed my way through like half of it, like based on the knowledge that I already had. But like I said, I was just lucky. I would not recommend doing that in your actual exams. Don't do that. So then I had a few months before, you know, I had to get my exam results. So it was at this time that people who are aware of my old channel will be interested in knowing what happened to it. So during the last few months of school, I attempted to make a deal with Cybugi, my good friend, and his friends. My deal with Cybugi was basically, hey, you could like upload a few videos onto my channel, because like at the time I was turning my channel into like a group channel for me and some other people who didn't do anything. He was like, no, I'm not gonna do that, I'm not gonna make videos for you. And it wasn't like, well, you're not making videos for me, I'm making them like as part of this group channel. And it was like, no, I'm not doing that. So I decided the only way to make him happy would be if I shut down the channel, which at the time was my main channel. I was shutting down my main channel, which had almost 100 subscribers at the time. And I did. I shut it down. And then we drafted up some like terms for like how we would run a new channel. The idea was, so we'll have a new channel where all of us could upload videos together. Maybe we'll do live streams sometimes, but it'll primarily be videos. It'll be like fun edited stuff with at least two people from the group in every video. So all the videos would have at least 2 people in them to justify the group channel actually existing. And then we needed a name. Luckily, we had an idea for the name. This is the only official source for the name of Uninstalled that you are ever going to get. Uninstalled was the name of the group channel, by the way. This is the only official source for the name of that channel that you are going to get, because previously we had a policy where we would never discuss the origin of the name of that channel, and I'm sorry if the person in question is watching this video and has watched this far. The reason it's called Uninstalled is because when we finished school, I had a discussion with somebody over Discord. I can probably still find the messages. I had an argument with somebody, and they said, I've already uninstalled CSGO. And it was the stupidest, funniest comment I've ever heard. So I was like, what if we just make the name Uninstalled just to spite this person? And then we did. So yeah, the official reason Uninstalled is called Uninstalled is because I wanted to spite somebody from like a month or 2 earlier. I thought it would be funny to make a channel that had a decent amount of subscribers using a name based on what he did because he fell out with me. This is the only official place to find that information now, because everywhere else on Uninstalled we just make up I'm not on Uninstalled anymore. We just made up some kind of like stupid reason as to why the channel was called that. Like every time we came up with a different reason. That's the actual real reason. It's because someone uninstalled CSGO and I thought it would be funny to make fun of them. By the way, I'm really sorry if you're watching this and you hear that. This was like 3 years ago now, so I hope you can forgive me on that. And Uninstalled is kind of dead now anyway, so it's not like it really got anywhere. Sorry, James. Uninstalled is dead now. Yeah. So that's the story of Retro Journey creators shutting down, becoming Retro Journey Archive, and the story of Uninstalled. And that happened in between kind of school finishing and my exam results. Then I got my exam results, and this is where the story finally ends. I got my exam results. I was worried that I'd fail at least one exam, but I somehow, by the skin of my teeth, passed every exam. I didn't get like amazing results, I just about passed everything. I think the only exam that I maybe got like higher than a C on was physics, and where I got a B, and that was it. But yeah, I passed everything, just about. I had a sigh of relief. I didn't have to worry about my exam results anymore. And then I was told to leave. And for those of you that are in Britain, you'll know why that surprised me. I don't know if this is how it is in every school, but in the school that I was at, before I went in to get my exam results, the person in there was having a talk with the person giving them the exam results. And it was like, okay, so here's your exam results. Do you want to come to sixth form? You know, like, what? Like, you submitted, like, your things for sixth form. Everyone submitted, like, what they would choose for sixth form. And it's like, do you want to come into sixth form? Would you like to do that? Is that a thing you want to do? Or do you want to go to college? Or what do you want to do? And then I went in, and it was like, here's your exam results. And I was like, oh, cool, I passed everything. Okay, you're welcome. That was it. I didn't get asked if I wanted to go to sixth form. So I'm going to assume my results weren't good enough. Because they just straight up asked me to leave. So I didn't even get asked to sixth form, which meant I had to go to college. And then I basically dropped out of college, but that's a story for another time, which probably won't even be a video because it's really short. It basically just boils down to I was incredibly depressed and I was doing a course that I didn't want to do. So it wasn't even a subject that I wanted to do. And then I basically just dropped out of college. That's basically it. This has been a long video, holy crap. I spent like an hour and a half recording this, so I don't know how long the final video is going to be because I'm going to have to cut some stuff out and like remove all the awkward silences where I'm trying to think, but hopefully this like was interesting to watch. Thanks for watching, I guess, if you're at the end. I don't really know like how interesting this was. If you want to like, if you want me to do like more stuff like this, but it won't be as long and it won't be like, because that's basically like all the interesting stories I have from the past, like right there. I can probably like come up with a few more, but it won't be an hour and a half long. They'll probably just be like talking about whatever's been happening recently that I find interesting. That depends on if anything happens I actually find interesting. What kind of videos would you be interested in me making anyway? That's another question. The Payday 2 videos I kind of noticed people just ignore. The music stuff, some people seem to enjoy it, and then like obviously the Super Mario and the Mario Titles videos, like, everyone seemed to enjoy. But I've been thinking about doing some kind of, like, live action, like, skit stuff, and I won't appear in it, I'll just be recording it and writing it and directing it. I'll get other people to act in it. Like, I've been thinking about doing that for a while, like for a few years at least, because I've wanted to do videos like that for ages. I actually bought a camera a few years ago and I haven't had a chance to use it yet. That's actually not true, I did do one video a few years ago, but yeah. If you want to see stuff like that, tell me. I can probably come up with some like fun ideas, but it'll have to wait until all this COVID stuff is over, obviously, because this COVID stuff is like ground everything to a halt. Yeah, just tell me what you want to see. Just like leave a comment, tell me. Very interested in knowing what you'll want me to do. So thanks for watching, I guess. I'm gonna go edit this. It'll probably take a while, and then the rendering will also take a while. See ya!